Greetings and welcome back to Christian News and Views. Today we are looking at episode 47. And today, of course, is New Year's Eve. So I've decided, I looked at the paper here. I'm going to take a look at it here in a moment. Uh, but there's not much in the newspaper, so we're going to be doing what I call the 2024 review. But here's the uh, paper, and it does have triumphs and tragedies as far as the year go. And if you'll see this picture down here, that's Fisherman's Village, and that's one of the local news. You may be familiar with Fisherman's Village. It does have a reputation beyond Florida, but it's local news in that it's down here. And it's interesting, but it's not something that qualifies quite for a podcast. It is basically focused on the nation rather than just the local. I do want to point out that the Fisherman's Village that they're talking about here has been in receivership and is for sale. And there's all sorts of rumors constantly going around about it. We'll just have to see how that goes. As far as I know, it hasn't been sold yet. But there has been some news that involving the nation. And of course, you can pretty well guess what that was. Perhaps the biggest of the year involved Donald Trump, who drew the ire of the left. They determined early on that they would do all they could to prevent him from getting elected to a second term as president. And they didn't really particularly care whether there was truth or whatever. They just went all out. They gave their maximum effort. They made dubious charges against him. And it almost seemed like, sometimes it seemed like they were coming right after another at him. It was like throwing mud at him. They even tried him in court and got a conviction, and which is still standing at this point in time. But it was on, well, not on myself, and I'm not a lawyer, but others who have a much more legal competency than I do call it rather flimsy. It was the whole case. It's a play on words, but it's the only word I can think of. The whole case was trumped up. The had some evidence, and yes, there was a moral thing involved here that goes back, as I understand it, goes back decades. And so I do not know when he got saved. And so I don't know if this is when he was an unsaved person or after he got saved. I don't know many details about the situation that they're referring to. But many of the charges that they were considering were, as I understand it, they no longer were chargeable. Time because of passage of time, other things that involved. But they found some areas where they could maybe still throw at him, and they got a conviction out of a jury that was based in the very city that is devoted itself to going against him. And so even the jury selection itself is kind of questionable to some degree, maybe not legally, but morally. But anyhow, they got their conviction. And that, by the way, is probably going to be thrown out, be overturned as it gets into the higher courts. This has been the whole trend throughout the year. The left makes these charges, legal charges in many cases, and they bring these legal cases to court. They go and they get their wins down to lower courts, but then when it moves up and out of the New York climate, if you will, and moves into higher courts where the rule of law is at a higher level, and where the Constitution itself is valued higher, uh, then they get overturned, and they get either overturned outright or returned back to the court with instructions to change things a little bit. And I think that's what's going to happen with this conviction. I think once it gets into, he hasn't been sentenced yet, so they can't appeal it. Once he's sentenced, they're going to appeal, and once it gets appealed and starts going through the higher court, I fully expect it to be overturned because it's so flimsy and so outdated. I mean, time-wise, it's old, and it has no bearing on uh, in facts of law. So I don't, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, and I have not really sat down and looked at it because not being a lawyer, most of it I probably wouldn't understand. But I do understand this much, is that when things get out of that lower court area, which is basically in New York and strongly influenced by the politics of New York, then it gets, the thin ice starts to crack, put it that way. And things, I just feel that this is going to be completely overturned and be tossed into the trash can of history. Not meaning that history is always a trash can, but in this case it would be. They basically threw everything at him, including the kitchen sink. But what was the result of all this? Well, there was a landslide victory in November. He's now our president-elect. It would seem, and I'm not the first one to notice this, every time they threw a charge against him, and they twisted the facts to prove it, his standing with the American people went up, not down. Why? Did we want a criminal in presidency? No. What was happening, I believe, is that the American people were seeing through this leftist agenda, spearheaded by the liberals in the Democratic Party, but also with a very cooperative press, if you'll put it that way. I'm trying to be as nice as I can. They were out to get him. They were out to destroy him, to keep him from becoming reelected. And they didn't care how they went about it. But the American people saw through that. And it ended up being a landslide. I remember reading a letter to the editor in which somebody said, no, that was not a landslide, and went through all this data. Some of the data was accurate, some of it not, a little bit on the questionable side. But the writer didn't really have an understanding, apparently, of actually had an understanding of the Electoral College, but dismissed it. You can't dismiss it. Our founding fathers created the Electoral College for a purpose, because they wanted an even playing field. They did not want the rich and the famous to be able to control the government. You look at all the governments that existed back then, the rich, the famous, the royalty, those people were the ones who made policy. Those are the ones who made decisions that affected the common people. And for somebody to rise up from the ranks of the common people to represent them and try to run for office, extremely difficult, if not impossible. And so they wanted to play even playing field. So they also didn't want one state to dominate over another state. For instance, New York is a big state, both physically and in population. Well, what about smaller states? You can go all across their country and find smaller states than New York, or for that matter, California or Texas, or even Florida. It's a fairly good sized state. Uh, but you look at these things, and you look at the middle of America and how many smaller states there are. Well, the big states could dominate them. The so-called blue wall, if you look at it, these are big states. Pennsylvania's a big state. Michigan's fairly good size. Ohio's a good size. But when you combine them all together, that's a huge area. And so they had, or at least up until this year, they had control over that as far as the group of states are concerned. They call it the blue wall. Well, even that blue wall had um, the smaller states in it. Michigan is smaller than New York. Ohio is smaller than New York, and also of California or even Texas. And so you have these big states, and even long before many of the western states ever became part of the United States, our founding fathers saw the need to have a level playing field. And so they created the Electoral College to reflect this. Every state, no matter their size, got two. If I remember correctly, they got two based on uh, their, I believe this the Senate. Yeah, I believe it's based on the Senate. Yeah, every state gets two senators. I believe that's correct. I didn't check my facts on that one. So sorry about that. But anyhow, they created a level playing field so that no one state can dominate um, the political scenery. This particular woman who wrote this letter, I suspect she came originally from New York or something like that, because that sounds like the kind of cry that would come from a big state person. They don't feel it's fair. I mean, they are bigger, and therefore they should have more of a say. Well, we are the United States, not state, and so that level field has lasted for over 200 years, and that is just something that you can't just dismiss. And so that letter to the editor, it was her protest, but it was based on either bias or ignorance or a combination thereof. So anyhow, that's my take on the national news. On a more personal level, 2024 has been exciting, albeit rather busy year for me. I got 6 different things. Number one, I began the Christian News and Views, which you're watching right now, podcast, and have thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been new for me. It's not my first podcast. I have another one called Becoming a Published Author, and that I've continued to do and expand, and I'm making changes in it that you'll see next year, actually, this very same week. You'll see it on Thursday, which will be the January 2nd. So these 2 podcasts kind of excited me. It's I've been in YouTube a little bit here and there over the years, but I'm getting into it more now, and we're going to see where that takes me. But it's been an enjoyable time, a busy time, and I have, like I said, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you have too. So anyhow, I've also made the initial move to full-time financial involvement in the publishing business. Now, what's that about? Well, in 2014, my wife and I founded T&R Independent Books for the exclusive purpose of, at that point, of publishing my books. But she revealed to me at that same time that she had a secret desire to be an author herself. Well, that excited me. we founded the business, and life kind of got in the way. I had a heart attack that very same month, and then on top of that, after that, my wife had uh, two major cancer uh, events. Uh, in in 2018, she had what she called the bear. And that was, I don't know what stage it was, but it was advanced cancer. And that took chemotherapy, uh, radiation therapy, and finally surgery. Got it all. Well, in 2000, that was, now that was not actually 2018, that was the second one. The first one was just chemo and radiation. The second one in 2019 was the three of them: chemo, radiation, and then the surgery. And now at the end of that, the doctor went in and made sure that everything was taken out that was even close, might even be suspect of being cancer. Cancer has a way of coming back, and in 2022 it did come back. It was very, very small, microscopic, if you will. But and when she did pass away, it wasn't because of cancer. It was actually due to some of the treatment. But anyhow, the we founded the business in 2014. So I spent the next few years really going back to where I had published previous books, buying the rights, bringing them in under that the banner of T&R Independent Books, and so now all the books I've ever written are either have been discontinued or, well, actually they've all been brought to me. I own them, but I've either discontinued them, or in some cases I think I may have changed the name here or so, here or there. But and then others I just simply republished them. And then in 2022, my wife published, actually 2021, I believe she published her first book. And but we republished it in 2022. Plus, she wrote three ladies' devotionals and was working on her fourth one when she went into the hospital. And so that was in 2022. So 2023 is when she passed away. And it was after she passed away that things became a little dicey, because up until then we had been living on uh, the whatever proceeds came in from the books, the and Social Security, my Social Security and her Social Security. I was doing volunteer work and not actually drawing pay. So I was doing volunteer work at my church, and so we didn't have any other income but that. Well, in 2023, she passed away, and so I lost her Social Security, kept my own, and that's got things a little dicey. So I took, and the Lord led me to work at local resort, Sunseeker Resort here, which I've enjoyed. I didn't really expect it at my age. I was 80 years old at the time, and I was surprised that they hired me. But I survived the initial few weeks of getting back into the workforce, and I've been still working there now. But in 2024, I made the full-time financial commitment. Uh, so all my money that comes in, whether it be Social Security or the income from Sunseekers, is actually loaned uh, to my business, and then the business then pays me back a portion of that so that I can live. Um, it's something that I was given legal advice to do it that way, and so it's really working out well for me. Really working out better, even more so for the business. But that was a full time movement, and I'm waiting on the Lord as to when I make the final adjustment of actually leaving Sunseekers and going into full time work at uh, Sunseekers. So I already mentioned I became active in YouTube. That became a feature in 2024. I don't know if you could say there was an actual time when I decided I was going to become it. As I was developing and becoming a published author, that got me more and more involved in it. I was basically, when I first started that podcast, I was really on um, basically Facebook and then LinkedIn, and then I finally decided to involve YouTube in it. And then came Christian News and Views. So it's been an exciting time for me, and getting involved in all these different areas, and it's leading to 2025. Well, part of that adjustment or leading to is I got a new studio. Now, I want you to see here. So back here is a map of the city of Jerusalem back in the time of David. Well, actually, no, that back in the time of Jesus. You can look uh, here on the left-hand side, right there. That's that little bitty part was the city of David, and so it kind of grew over the time. But this was something I picked up. So outfit no longer exists, but there was a center here in Florida. Open to it was called almost had it. I'll think about it after the episode's all over with. Uh, but the name of the outfit they it was something experience Holy Land Experience, I think it was called. And in any case, it was open to the public. It was like a park you could go to, and this is one of the things that I bought. I liked it. I bought it, and I put it up there. And it has information about different aspects of the city, locations and stuff like that. And so this is my new studio. Kind of like it, as opposed to what I had before. And it has something. I always wanted something behind me, something that you might find interesting, if not attractive. Something that would make for a better studio experience. And so that began this year. So aside from that, I've laid the foundation for a greater success in 2025. Now, part of this review here is also I'm going to give you a review of the business itself now. So with a weak economy, and we had a weak economy, which is one of the things that contributed to Trump's election, I experienced difficulties, as most of you have. I would dare say all of us have experienced it. It's just a very down economy. Forget what the experts say. They say, oh, it's all over with. We are now in a more positive economy or whatever. They look at numbers. I look at people. And when you look at people and what they're going through, we are still in a weak. Now, yes, since the election, since November, once Trump got elected, we have seen an uptick. Not so much in the national numbers, although that might be true. I don't really follow it anymore. I used to follow that a lot closer than I do now. But I've seen it locally. I've seen it in my own life. The leveling off of things, and the inflation was going up, and now prices have leveled off. They've dipped a little bit, but not as much as I'd like to see them dip. But it was a weak economy, very difficult for businesses. So sales dipped. But I looked at I've been starting my year-end examination, and I am pleased to say that while it's not my greatest year, 23 was my greatest year, 24 was still a good year for me. And I'm very pleased with that. And I'm looking forward to 2025. Now, do you like this channel? Do you like hearing me give the Christian viewpoint on news and so forth like that. If you do, I hope that you, and if you have not subscribed yet, I hope you will. And down below here, you have the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. And by subscribing to my channel, which is sponsored by T&R Independent Books, you get Becoming a Published Author is Fun, that podcast. You also get Christian News and Views. Both will come to if you have a YouTube channel, it will come to your YouTube channel. If you follow me, you should get a notification in your email. And so that brings me up to what I feel obligated to tell you is that, as I mentioned a moment ago, T&R Independent Books is a sponsor of this podcast. It is provides you the access to Christian News and Views, and Becoming a Published Author is Fun. The business itself is involved in transforming people from where you're at to becoming published authors. There is Basic Authors Training, or BAT, B-A-T. There's Ministry Publishing, or MP, and that takes you don't have to learn how to write. You've already written, and you're a Christian, an active Christian, active in your church. Then I'm interested in having you as a client. And I've been pleased with the interest I'm getting there. And then there's Fast Track, which is actually started this year. And I have hopes for that. That is same thing as Ministry Publishing, but at a 3 months. Say you want to have it in 3 months rather than a whole year or so. And so that one requires you to already have your book pretty much ready, published ready. I'll do some formatting, I'll do some editing and stuff like that, but you don't have to be trained, don't have to be taught. I'll still do some, but on a very limited basis. And because I have to get it out within a 90-day guaranteed time frame. And so that is something that I want to develop and keep pushing too. So I'm excited about this year, and I'm excited about this podcast itself because it gives me an opportunity to cut through the noise that's coming from the media. I still get a paper. A lot of times there's very little of it that I like. I use some of it for the podcast, and there's some of it I just for entertainment, and I do follow sports, so it keeps me up online on that. Beyond that, not a whole lot. I want you to have a Christian view, a more balanced view, if you will, of the major news. And there might be some things that I have not covered that you would say, I would like to see you cover this. Okay, let me know. And I will take a look at it and see. You can critique me. You can disagree with me. Let me know, and I'll take a look at it. So, and I may even comment on it or something in a future podcast, or in a comment. I might provide a comment as a follow-up to the podcast itself. So anyhow, that is it for today. Year 2024 is drawing to a close. My next episode will be tomorrow, January 1st, 2025. I will see you then in that next episode, episode 48. And you have a great New Year's Eve and a greater New Year.